The fox was starving, and the cat knew it. Snow covered the ground in a white silence that swallowed every sound, every scent. Behind a half-collapsed barn, the orange fox trembled, ribs showing beneath his thin fur. A few meters away, a grey tabby cat crouched beside a dented metal bowl filled with leftovers, bits of chicken skin and dry kibble she had saved from the old woman's porch. Their eyes met through the drifting snow. Neither moved. For a long moment, it was only breath and hunger. The cat lowered her head, nudged the bowl with her paw and slid it across the ice. The metal scraped softly, echoing like a secret being told. The fox froze, then stepped forward, uncertain, his tail low. When his nose touched the edge of the bowl, he looked up again, expecting a trap, a hiss, anything. But the cat only sat there, her body still, but her gaze steady. He ate, not quickly, not greedily, just carefully, like someone who knew that survival had a cost. When the last crumbs were gone, the fox backed away, one slow step at a time, leaving small red stains on the snow from a wound on his leg. From the window of the nearby house, the old woman saw everything. She had been feeding the stray cat for months, never guessing she wasn't the only one being fed. Her hand shook as she lowered the curtain. "You've been sharing, haven't you, little one?" she whispered. "If you think animals don't understand kindness, you've never seen a starving fox accept mercy from a cat." That night, the cat waited by the barn again. The storm had worsened. Wind screamed through the trees, carrying the smell of wet earth and pine. No fox came. Hours passed, snow piling around her paws. She finally turned back toward the porch light, the small circle of warmth that meant food and shelter. But halfway there, she stopped. A sound, faint, broken, came from the woods. A cry, the kind no animal ignores. She hesitated, fur bristling, then darted into the darkness, paws sinking into cold drifts. Branches snapped, snow fell in clumps. The sound came again, closer now, weaker. When she found him, the fox was lying near a fallen tree, his leg caught in a rusted trap. Blood marked the snow like petals. His eyes were dull, but when he saw her, they softened. The cat circled him once, tail twitching. She couldn't free him. She couldn't drag him. All she could do was sit beside him, pressing her body against his trembling side, sharing what little warmth she had. By morning, both were gone. Only paw prints remained, 2 trails leading toward the old barn. When the woman found them there hours later, she gasped. The trap had been dragged across the snow, leaving a long, jagged line. The fox was alive, barely, his legs swollen but no longer bleeding. The cat was curled against him, her fur matted with ice. The woman dropped to her knees. "Oh, you brought him back," she whispered. The fox lifted his head weakly, and for just a moment, his nose brushed the cat's. If only she knew what that gesture meant. Because what happened after this silent act of mercy would change both of their lives forever. The woman's name was Marta, 73 years old, widowed, living alone at the edge of the forest where nobody came unless they were lost. She had taken in strays before, a limping dog, a wounded pigeon, a kitten left in a shoebox, but never anything wild. When she saw the fox breathing shallowly beside the grey cat that morning, something inside her shifted. The scene didn't feel like nature. It felt like a decision, one made in silence between 2 creatures who refused to give up on each other. Marta wrapped the fox in an old blanket and carried him inside. The cat followed without a sound, limping slightly, her fur crusted with ice. Inside the kitchen, the air smelled of wood smoke and tea. Marta placed the fox near the stove, where heat licked the floorboards, then filled a bowl with warm water. "Easy now," she murmured, kneeling beside him. "You're safe here." The fox's leg was a mess. The metal trap had cut deep into the flesh. Marta's hands trembled as she cleaned it, but she kept going, talking softly like she used to with her husband when his heart was failing. "You'll see," she whispered. "We'll make you whole again." The cat never moved from the corner. She watched everything with those steady green eyes, calm, unblinking, like she was making sure the woman didn't forget who had found him first. When Marta was done, she set down a bowl of milk for the cat and a plate of chicken for the fox. But the cat nudged her bowl toward him again. same as before. Marta froze. Her throat tightened. You really don't know what's yours and what's his, do you? The cat blinked once. Outside, the wind howled, shaking the windows. That night, Marta couldn't sleep. She sat by the stove watching the fox breathe, watching the cat curled up beside him like a guardian. She thought of her husband's last winter, how cold the house had felt after he was gone. The silence then had been unbearable, heavy like the snow pressing down on the roof now. But in that silence tonight, there was something else. Something alive. At dawn, the fox stirred. His eyes opened, darting around the room. Confusion, then fear. He tried to stand, stumbled, growled weakly. The cat stepped forward, rubbing her head against his neck. And he stopped. Marta covered her mouth. "Oh, my heart," she whispered. "You trust her more than you trust me." For the next week, she cared for both. She named the cat Nina, and the fox she called Ash because of the color his fur turned when dry. Every morning, she found them together by the door, waiting. Nina would meow once, sharp, commanding, and Ash would limp out beside her into the snow, disappearing into the woods. Every afternoon they returned, always together, always in step. But something began to change. Ash grew stronger, his leg healing faster than Marta expected. He started to keep his distance, first a few steps behind Nina, then the length of the yard, then the edge of the trees. And every time Marta opened the door, he froze like a shadow between two worlds, one of kindness, one of instinct. Still, he never stopped coming back. Until the night he didn't. A storm broke without warning, the kind that roared across the valley, bending trees and swallowing paths. Marta called from the porch, voice lost in the wind. "Nina! Ash!" Only the storm answered. By midnight she found Nina at the barn, soaked and shivering, alone. No fox. The cat meowed once, low, desperate. Then she turned, running into the darkness again. Marta tried to follow, but her boots sank deep in the snow. She could barely see the path. "Nina, wait!" The cat didn't stop. Hours later, Marta collapsed at her porch, breath burning in her chest. No sound, no movement, just the endless white. She sat there until the storm eased and the first light touched the horizon. That's when she saw them. Small prints in the snow leading from the woods. One set of paws and one trail of dragging steps. Her pulse jumped. "Ash!" She followed the tracks to the back of the barn. Under the old wooden beam, Ash lay curled again, but something was wrong. His chest rose unevenly. Around him the snow was marked with blood more than before. The cat was beside him, pressing her face into his fur, as if trying to keep him from fading. Marta dropped to her knees. The fox opened his eyes at the sound of her voice. He looked at her, not in fear this time, but with something else. Then his gaze drifted toward Nina, who was still nudging him softly. It took Marta a moment to understand what she was seeing. The fox's body was smaller than before. His ribs stuck out again. His breath came in tiny bursts. He had dragged himself back here through the snow, wounded again, to the only place that had ever felt safe. And beside him, a tiny scrap of fur moved. Marta blinked, leaned closer. A newborn fox kit, still blind, pressed against Nina's belly for warmth. "Oh, God," Marta whispered. She wasn't just feeding him. Nina licked the baby gently, then looked up at Marta. Calm, steady, proud. The same look she'd had the first time she shared her food. Marta covered her mouth, tears freezing on her cheeks. "You brought him back because he couldn't leave her alone," she whispered. "You knew." The fox closed his eyes, breathing slower now. The cat stayed beside him until the end, her tail wrapping around his still body. The kit nestled between them. When Marta carried the little one inside, Nina followed quietly, head low, steps light as snowfall. That night the wind stopped. The world outside turned silent again, but not empty. Because from the cradle near the stove came a small sound, a tiny heartbeat. And that was when Marta realized, mercy doesn't just save lives, sometimes it creates them. The house felt different after that night, warmer somehow, even though outside the world was still frozen. The small fox kit slept inside a cardboard box near the stove, wrapped in an old wool scarf. His fur was pale red, his breath barely a whisper. Every few hours, Nina would climb into the box, curl around him, and press her body close until his tiny frame stopped trembling. Marta watched them from her rocking chair, hands folded, the firelight flickering over her face. "I never thought I'd live to see this," she murmured. A cat raising a fox. Days turned into weeks. The kit grew stronger, his legs steady, his eyes open now, curious and bright. He learned to follow Nina across the kitchen floor, stumbling after her tail. Sometimes she'd stop suddenly and wait, pretending not to notice him. When he finally caught up, she'd flick her tail once, lightly brushing his face, then move away again. It wasn't just play, it was training. The way mothers teach patience and control. Marta began to write about them in a notebook she kept on the table. Day 12. The baby ate on his own today. Nina watched the whole time. I swear she smiled. One afternoon, a truck stopped on the distant road. A man in a forestry uniform stepped out, crunching through the snow toward the house. Marta met him halfway. "Afternoon, ma'am," he said, tipping his hat. "We've been tracking a wounded fox in these parts, big male. Might have been caught in a trap. Haven't seen any signs lately. Just wondering if you noticed something." Marta hesitated. Her throat tightened. "I found one," she said quietly. "He didn't make it." The ranger nodded slowly. "I'm sorry to hear that." His gaze drifted toward the porch, where a small shadow moved, the kit peeking from behind the door. "Now you've got another?" Marta stepped in front of the view. "Just a kitten," she lied. When the man left, she closed the door and leaned against it, heart racing. Nina stood by the box, eyes fixed on her. "I won't let them take him," Marta whispered. "Not after everything." That night, the wind picked up again. Snow drifted against the windows, glowing blue under the moonlight. Inside, the fox kit slept soundly, his small paw resting against Nina's. Marta couldn't stop thinking about what the ranger had said. A wounded fox, a big male. She wondered how far Ash had traveled to bring his child here, how long he'd fought to keep him alive before collapsing. The thought broke something in her. In the days that followed, Marta became protective, almost desperate. She built a small enclosure behind the barn, lined it with hay and old blankets, a safe place for the kit to grow. But Nina didn't like fences. She would climb out, disappear for hours, and always come back with something in her mouth, a dead mouse, a leaf, once even a small feather. She was teaching him what wild meant. Marta didn't understand it at first. "You have food here," she said softly one evening, kneeling beside them. "You don't need to go out there anymore." Nina just looked at her, that deep, unreadable look animals have when they know something you don't. Spring came slow but sure. Snow melted into streams, grass appeared again. The forest filled with sound, crows, dripping branches, the faraway rush of thawed water, and the kit, now strong and sleek, began to change. He started pacing near the door at night, scratching gently, nose pressed to the glass. His body itched for something instinctual, something Nina seemed to understand. One evening, Marta found them both sitting outside, side by side, staring at the tree line. The sun was low, painting everything gold. "You want to leave?" Marta said softly. Nina turned her head but didn't move. The kit, now nearly grown, lifted his face to the wind, catching a scent only he could read. Then he looked back once, his eyes catching the light just like his father's had. Marta felt her chest tighten. "He's ready," she whispered, "and you know it." But when she reached for the cat, Nina stepped away. That night, she stayed awake by the stove, waiting. She knew what was coming, had known for days. When the first light touched the horizon, she opened the door quietly. Nina was gone. Only a single grey hair clung to the edge of the blanket inside the box. The kit, too, had vanished. Marta walked outside barefoot, the ground cold and damp beneath her feet. The air smelled of pine and rain. Near the edge of the forest, she saw the prints, two sets, side by side. One small, one steady. She followed them until they disappeared into the ferns, and then she stopped. For a long while she stood there, eyes wet, heart aching and proud all at once. She whispered into the trees, "Go live the way you were meant to." Days passed. The house felt empty again, too quiet. Marta tried to busy herself, sweeping, tending her garden, lighting the stove. But every creak of the floorboards made her look toward the door, expecting a soft meow that never came, till one morning in late summer. She was hanging laundry outside when a rustle came from the tall grass. A flash of grey moved between the leaves. Marta froze. Slowly she knelt, heart racing. Nina emerged first, thinner now, older, her fur rough, but her eyes just as fierce. And behind her, 3 small fox kits tumbled out of the grass, their fur the same warm red as ashes, their movements clumsy and bright. Marta dropped the wet sheet from her hands. "Oh my God!" Nina walked forward, stopping a few feet away. She looked at Marta, then turned her head toward the forest. A clear message. They're safe now. The kits circled her legs, curious, playful. One of them, the smallest, stared at Marta with calm, curious eyes, then took a step closer. Nina didn't stop him. He reached the woman's feet and sniffed her toes before darting back. Marta laughed through her tears. "You came back," she whispered. "You wanted me to see." Nina blinked slowly, the way cats do when they're saying something words can't. Then she turned and disappeared into the trees again, her tail brushing the tall grass like smoke. The kits followed one by one. Marta stood there until they were gone, the sound of the forest swallowing their footsteps. She pressed a hand to her chest. The place that had felt hollow for so long finally felt full again, but she didn't yet know. That was not the last time she would see them. Because one night, when the world went silent again, something happened by the porch that no one could ever explain. The air had that stillness only autumn brings, the kind that holds its breath between seasons. Marta sat by the porch with a cup of tea, wrapped in her old brown shawl. The sky was pale, streaked with silver clouds. Somewhere deep in the forest, a fox cried. Short, low, distant. She closed her eyes. It had been almost a year since Nina's last visit. The kits would be grown by now, wild and wary like their father once was. Marta often told herself that was enough, that they had survived, that nature had taken back what was hers. But there were nights when she still set out a bowl by the door, filled with bits of chicken, and left the porch light on just in case. That night was one of them. Wind rustled the dry leaves. The forest sighed. Marta stood, bones aching, ready to go inside when she heard it. The soft scrape of claws against the wood. She froze. At the edge of the porch, under the dim yellow light, a shadow moved. Slow, careful. Then came a shape she knew too well. Grey fur streaked with white, eyes glowing like embers in the dark. "Nina!" The cat stepped into the light, thinner now, her coat rough, but her steps deliberate. In her mouth she carried something, a small bundle wrapped in moss and leaves. She laid it down at Marta's feet, then sat back, tail curling around her legs. Marta knelt slowly, her breath trembling. Inside the bundle was a piece of torn fabric, the same wool scarf that had once kept Ash's kit warm by the stove. It was chewed, frayed, but still recognizable. And nestled inside it, clinging to the threads, was a small feather, white, delicate, from a forest bird. Marta didn't understand at first. Then she saw it, the faintest trace of blood on Nina's paw, not fresh, faded like a memory. The cat had been hurt again, but she'd come back. Not to stay, just to leave something behind. "You kept it," Marta whispered. All this time, Nina blinked, slow and calm. Her gaze drifted toward the trees, then back to Marta. She let out one quiet meow, almost too soft to hear. A goodbye. Then she turned to leave. "Wait," Marta said, reaching out. Her fingers brushed the cat's fur, cold, thin, trembling. For a heartbeat, Nina leaned into the touch, the same way she once leaned against a dying fox to keep him warm. And then she was gone. Marta sat there long after the forest swallowed her again. The tea had gone cold. The night deepened. She could have sworn she heard the faint crunch of paws in the distance, more than one pair. The sound of others waiting for her. Over the next few days, Marta left food again, but it was never touched. The forest grew quieter as winter crept back in. She told herself maybe Nina had gone to rest, that her work was done. Weeks later, on the first snow, Marta woke to a sound at the door. Not scratching this time, just movement. When she opened it, the world outside was white again. And there, at the edge of the yard, stood a fox, red, tall, strong, his fur glowing in the snowlight. Beside him, smaller shapes shifted, 3, maybe 4 young foxes, waiting behind him. He didn't move closer, didn't flinch. He only looked at her, head slightly tilted, eyes steady. Something about the way he stood made her breath catch, the same calm presence, the same silent patience. And then, behind them, a flicker of grey, Nina, older, slower but unmistakable. She stepped forward once, looked straight at Marta and sat. Snow fell gently on her fur. The fox turned his head, brushed his muzzle against her ear. Marta's eyes filled. "You raised them together," she whispered. "You never left him alone." The fox blinked once, a mirror of the cat beside him, and then the group turned and disappeared into the trees, their shapes melting into the white. Marta stood at the doorway, hand pressed to her heart, the cold biting her skin. Something small caught her eye at her feet, a paw print, not of a fox, not of a cat, but both, overlapping perfectly in the snow. She knelt, tracing the shape with her trembling fingers. It was their story, pressed into the earth. Fragile, fleeting, but real. That night, she placed the torn scarf and feather on the windowsill, beside the old metal bowl the cat once used to share her food. She lit a candle and sat by the window until dawn, watching the flame dance. When the first light touched the forest, Marta smiled through her tears. "You showed me," she whispered. "Love doesn't care what kind you are." And somewhere deep in the woods, a fox cried again. Not in hunger, but in something softer. Gratitude, maybe, or remembrance. The sound faded slowly, like a lullaby the world had almost forgotten. That morning, Marta buried the metal bowl beneath the oak by the barn. She didn't mark the spot. She didn't need to. The forest knew. The snow would come and go, and one day, maybe no one would remember the woman, the cat, or the fox. But the kindness that had passed between them, the food shared, the warmth given, the life born, would echo quietly in the woods, long after everything else was gone. Because mercy, once given, never really disappears. It changes shape, finds new bodies, new hearts. And that night, she didn't just remember a cat. She remembered what it felt like to believe again. That night, she didn't just save a cat. She saved the last piece of her heart that still believed in kindness.